These artifacts, who do they belong to?
They belong to the museums where they are now, because there are laws, And if even for the artifacts which were looted in the 19th century, the war, there was laws, and the looting of war was legal. Maybe it's not moral, but it's legal. And if you want to come back on this, why don't you come back 19th century, 17th century, 16th century? You cannot stop. You don't know where to stop.
But at the time, they weren't independent countries.
Yes.
So, of course, the colonial power can decide to take stuff. I mean, it is looting, isn't it?
No. It is looting, yes. Part of it was looting.
Africa, a continent brimming with history, culture, and art. It is the birthplace of humanity and the cradle of civilization. From ancient Egypt to the Kingdom of Mali, Africa has given the world knowledge, wisdom, and creative brilliance. Yet, despite its rich legacy, much of Africa's invaluable cultural heritage remains far from its shores, locked away in foreign museums. These artifacts are not mere objects. They are the essence of Africa's past, the embodiment of our identity, and the spirit of our ancestors. For decades, Africa has been engaged in a relentless fight for the return of these treasures, artifacts looted during colonial times and in the aftermath. The question is no longer whether they should be returned. It's about how and when. The story of African artifacts in European museums begins in the dark days of colonialism. From the late 19th century onwards, European powers plundered Africa's cultural treasures under the guise of exploration and discovery. At the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, European nations divided Africa among themselves without any regard for the heritage. Art, spiritual relics, royal treasures was seized by force or deceit. For example, during the British Empire's conquest of Nigeria, the Kingdom of Benin was sacked in 1897. The British forces looted thousands of valuable items, including the famous Benin Bronzes, intricate brass, bronze, and ivory plaques that adorned the royal palace of Benin. These works of art, representing not just royal power, but also the spiritual and cultural heritage of the Benin Kingdom, were carted off to Europe, where they remain in the British Museum and other European collections. One of the most iconic examples of Africa's stolen heritage is the throne of King Ghezo of Abomey in present-day Benin. In 1892, French colonial forces took this magnificent throne after their invasion. Today, it resides in the Quai Branly Museum in Paris. But this throne is more than just a seat of power. It's a symbol of resistance, strength, and the traditions of the Abomey people, who fought against French colonization. King Ghezo's throne embodies the endurance and sovereignty of a people who were determined not to be subjugated. In 2020, the French government announced the return of King Ghezo's throne, along with other looted artifacts, to Benin, a monumental step in the ongoing battle to heal the wounds of colonialism. This act marked a new era for the repatriation movement, but many challenges remain. Another powerful symbol of Africa's stolen heritage is the throne of the Cameroon Kingdom, now held in Berlin's Ethnological Museum. This intricately crafted throne, once the centerpiece of royal Cameroon culture, was taken by German forces during colonial expeditions. Its return would signify more than just the return of an object. It would be the reclamation of a people's dignity, identity, and cultural pride stolen during the brutal colonial era. The Benin Bronzes are one of the most widely known and contentious cases in the battle for repatriation. In 1897, British forces looted thousands of these masterpieces during the Maasai people of Kenya and Tanzania have also been fighting for the return of cultural artifacts that were taken during colonial encounters. One such artifact is a Maasai warrior's shuka, a traditional garment now held in the British Museum. This garment, simple yet profound, holds the spirit of the Maasai people: resilience, culture, and resistance. The shuka was taken during a period when European powers sought to suppress indigenous cultures and impose foreign values. Its return would be a powerful acknowledgement of Africa's sovereignty and dignity. The fight to repatriate Africa's stolen artifacts is about more than reclaiming objects. It is about restoring dignity, pride, and identity.
A dozen people came to the Paris courthouse to support Congolese activist Imri Mwazulu Diabanza. Prosecutors on Wednesday asked for him to be fined €1,000. In June, he had tried to seize a 19th century Chadian artwork from the Quai Branly Museum in Paris. It was part of a campaign calling for France to give back to African countries the artworks it seized mostly during the colonial era.
Quelqu'un peut-il vraiment nous démontrer noir sur blanc que ces œuvres-là appartiennent au musée du Quai Branly, alors que les rapports reconnaissent et que le président français, de par lui-même, reconnaît qu'il a volé à Ouagadougou, il a reconnu. Donc, on voit aisément dans quel camp les citoyens du monde doivent se trouver, parce que ce sont les valeurs de justice.
These treasures were taken during an era of brutality and oppression, and their return symbolizes the restoration of justice and respect for Africa's cultural heritage. Repatriation is an essential part of Africa's journey towards healing and empowerment. However, the road to repatriation is not without challenges. Legal and political hurdles persist. For instance, the United Kingdom. One particularly compelling case is a dispute over artifacts in King's College London, where looted Benin bronzes were used as teaching tools in the late 19th century. This blatant disregard for African cultural property highlights the need for a broader rethinking of museum practices and the ethical obligations of institutions that hold stolen artifacts. Political and economic barriers also complicate the process. Many African nations face challenges in housing and preserving these priceless treasures once they return. Limited resources, inadequate infrastructure, and the lack of skilled personnel to conserve such artifacts are genuine concerns. However, these obstacles should not serve as excuses to withhold these objects from their rightful owners. The fight for the repatriation of African artifacts has gained momentum in recent years. Organizations like the African Renaissance Movement and figures such as Nigerian professor and activist Chiko Kekeagulu have been instrumental in raising global awareness about the need to return Africa's stolen heritage. The growing support for the cause from African leaders, scholars, and international human rights organizations signals a shift in the global conversation about colonial legacies and cultural justice. The return of the Benin Bronzes and King Ghezo's throne are not isolated victories, but part of a larger movement to restore Africa's cultural heritage. This fight is not just about recovering objects. It's about reclaiming Africa's rightful place in the world and restoring the pride and dignity that was stolen during centuries of colonization. As African nations unite in this fight for this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of African history and culture. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What are your views on the repatriation of African artifacts? Let's keep this vital conversation going and support Africa in reclaiming its heritage.